Have you ever seen something for sale and just thought, nah, I don't need that. That's just something I won't really use. And as time goes by, you give in to your inner temptation, bought the item and then thought, shit, I've really missed out. Near the beginning of 2023, I bought a new lens. Shock horror. And that new lens genuinely goes everywhere with me. And I use it that much that I'm now considering selling my 16-35. I genuinely can't remember when I last used that lens. So in this video, I want to give you an insight into why I decided to buy this lens. What I like about it, but also the things that I don't like about it. But first, I think it's important to understand why it took me so long to get to this point. And when it comes to prime lenses, which is my chosen option, I don't have anything wider than a 35mm. I also seem to be making more videos outside of these four walls, and my 16-35 isn't what I'd call the most compact lens in the world, and it's pretty pointless taking it out when I'm using it at 16mm 99% of the time. Enter the Sony FE 20mm f1.8. Certainly a lens that I didn't expect to even keep, let alone love. To say a lens has changed my life is a pretty big statement, but I'm gonna make that claim. First off, the lens to begin with. It's the smallest lens in terms of size out of all my primes, but it still has the 67mm filter thread, so I can still use the same filters with all of my primes. And I'd say it's a pretty perfect match for a camera like the A7C Mark II if you're wanting to start making videos, especially content for social media. The build quality of this lens is superb. I'm actually surprised that Sony didn't slap a red G sticker on it, call it a G Master, and stick a 0 on the end of the price. I believe the focus technology which is in this lens is identical to the 24mm and many other G Masters in the line. A declickable aperture ring for all the videographers out there. However, like the focusing ring on many other lenses, the focus ring and the aperture ring on this lens is connected electronically. It also has the button on the side which we can connect to any of the settings on our cameras, autofocus and manual focus switch, and all of this can be purchased for less than £900 in the UK, or considerably less if you decide to buy used, making it one of, if not the most affordable prime lens from Sony, which falls into a wide angle category, easily £300 to £400 less than the 24mm f1.4. And aside from the 4mm difference and a slight difference in aperture, there's nothing significant that stands out in my opinion. But this video isn't a comparison video. However, if you do want to see a comparison between the 24 and the 20mm, let me know in the comments. So what's it like using a wide prime lens? Challenging at times and a blessing at others. With primes, I always find them to be a little bit of a learning curve. You have to spend time working out what works well with that flavor of lens. For a while, I just used it for the wide established shots in the wedding business. That's all I really felt comfortable with using it for. But now I use it for a bunch of things when it comes to the weddings, and especially here on the YouTube channel. The 20mm is the lens I'm using right now for this video, and it's the look I've been wanting to have for so long. This is obviously slightly wider than the 24mm, which is obviously still a great lens, but wasn't wide enough to suit my requirements. And a 20mm is still perfectly acceptable when it comes to doing portraits, just at a little bit more of a distance. It just gives you a little bit more of a different perspective to the usual 35 and 85. And if I need to do any filming with the A7R5 or the A7 IV in a tight area, I can throw the 20mm onto the camera, even filming slow motion, and still get around a 24 or 30mm field of view. This lens just seems to tick all of the boxes. And a lot of that is down to the aperture. At the moment, it's at its widest at f1.8. And it's still at f1.8, it's incredibly sharp. But having a lens with f1.8, as you'll probably know with other prime lenses, is a huge advantage when the amount of light just isn't enough and you can't or don't want to use artificial lighting. And that is the biggest reason why I decided to swap out the 16-35 for the 20mm when it came to the weddings. I've also heard and seen incredible things about the 20mm when it comes to astrophotography. However, I swear someone is paying the weatherman. Every time I try and do astrophotography, the weather just knows and it gets cloudy, rainy, it just never happens. f1.8 isn't and shouldn't be used all of the time regardless of what people say on here, but having it in a lens at your disposal isn't something to complain about. But with all the good things about this lens, surely there's something which is a bit of a negative. Well, there is, and that is the sharpness. But hang on, Danny, didn't you say earlier on that the image is really sharp? It is for the most part. This lens is tack sharp pretty much across the entirety of the image. However, there has been times where I've noticed it to become a little bit soft in the edges, and I mean the very edges, more so towards the corners. It's normally where you see the warping in the corners. However, this lens doesn't have much warping whatsoever. But let me play devil's advocate for just a second. How many times have you put your subject in the corner or on the very edge of your frame. However, it's never really affected me, but it's something to be aware of, because if I didn't mention it, someone would put it in the comments, so beat you to it. I've also had the odd moment where the lens is almost pulsating when trying to focus. From what I recall, the subject was stationary and I'd stopped down a little bit, and if I can find some footage of that happening, then I'll put it in the video. However, I could probably count on one hand how many times that's happened over the last year. So would I recommend this lens to you? Well, I love it, so I'll say yeah. If you're into landscapes, cityscapes, and you don't want to be carrying around a large zoom lens, then this is the one for you. Being marginally wider than 24mm, but knowing you can crop in if you wish, made this lens much more desirable for me. When I went to London just before Christmas, I took this alongside the Tamron 28-75. And with this 20mm, I took one of my most favorite photos I've ever taken. And if you're a content creator just like me and you're wanting to get a lens for your talking head angle, it's a definite yes from me. One final thing I'd like to add is that the Sony 20mm is definitely not the most affordable lens when comparing it to the likes of Tamron. However, the autofocus is quieter and smoother and the image quality is lovely. It's very much a lens which is capable of doing a lot of things and ticking a lot of boxes. However, there's one lens out there that tops every single lens when it comes to versatility. And you can find out exactly what that lens is right here. I'll see you soon.